Okay, so we're talking about NPCs this year, this VideoBrains, and the thing about NPCs is, well, I don't know if you all assume, but generally they are the ones that they sort of run around, they talk, they shout at you, they do stuff. I also found out that, I played with PowerPoint recently, so I found out it had loads of animations, so everything's really well animated, it's great. But yeah, so these are your obvious NPCs. They run around and they're people, and they talk, and that's great. But they are the kind of NPCs that are left over from other media. So they're from your films, your books, your plays, because that is how other media does storytelling. Games can do it a bit differently, which people have done. You've got your not so obvious NPCs, which are Navi, the dog from Fable, and Lilacor. Does anyone remember Lilacor? Yes. Lilacor is good. Does anybody not know who Lilacor is? Why have you brought all these fake gamers? Oh. No, okay, so Lilacor is from Baldur's Gate 2, yes. And it is a sword that talks, because it is possessed, inhabited by spirit. It's been a long time since I played Baldur's Gate 2. But it's basically really annoying. And these ones are cool because what they do is they work kind of games mechanics into the point of the NPC, so they're not just like story delivery systems. So, you know, Navi is a guide and tutorial that is irritating. The dog kind of tries to work in mechanics like finding things to make you care about it, and Lilacor is a sword. He is annoying or really amusing. So either you've got the choice of, do I use this really good sword but it's annoying, or if you find him really really amusing, when you find a better sword you're like, but he's funny, I want to use him. But those aren't the NPCs I'm talking about either. These are the kind of NPCs I'm talking about. Rooms and things. And they are what I call passive NPCs. And it's an NPC because people say places have a lot of character, and I've taken that very, very literally. Because a lot of places, and a lot of places that you inhabit in games are characters, and they're often what you remember about games. So here we've got Jensen's bedroom, Dunwall, and one of the shops from Binding of Isaac Rebirth. And I find these really interesting, and I'm going to explain to you why I find these really interesting. So why is that, which is a toilet, more interesting than that, which is Captain Price? And it's not because he stole my facial hair. He also had it first, but you know, whatever. So, a picture paints 1,000 words. So the thing about this is, and I'm using this, which actually Tom Hatfield mentioned to me last VideoBrains when I was thinking about this talk, because I had completely missed this the first time round, which is a point that I will get to later. But this is Jensen's mirror in his bathroom in his flat, or his apartment. And you don't have to go into this room at all, but if you do go into it, you find a broken mirror, and a post-it note just down at the bottom, which says, mirror is broken, or call landlord, RE mirror, replacement mirror, again. And I really like this, because it tells you an awful lot, but without ever trying to tell you it, or ever taking up any of your time, unless you take, you know, you could have had Jensen monologuing about how sad he is that he's been augmented and that he never asked for this. Or you can have somebody saying, hey Jensen, aren't you sad that you've been augmented and you're now a robot man? But instead, they did that. I mean, there are enough talks about him being a robot man, but they've done that, which implies a lot of things in a very short space of time. So the mirror is broken. What do mirrors do? Mirrors provide a reflection. It is broken. What does that imply? That implies Jensen is unhappy with his reflection and what he's become. But more interestingly, the post-it note, first of all, implies that this is a repeated thing. So he is really having trouble adapting to his life as a robot man. But also, the kind of exasperated tone of the post-it note implies that he is probably doing these in fits of passion, and that he's probably an alcoholic, because a bit earlier he's seen with a drink and there's lots of booze in his flat, so maybe he has turned to drink after his becoming of a robot man, and he gets angry and he punches the mirror. And that tells you a huge amount without ever making you kind of listen to it and watch it, and that's something that you can't really do elsewise. Yeah, they don't tell you what to think. So that's the mountain from the game. Or is it? Mountain. And that just kind of sits there, and it does some things. Or it doesn't do anything, and that's it. But people have invested themselves really heavily in this. Like there's an article from Philippa War for Rock Paper Shotgun, in which she talks about whether or not she wants to kill her mountain. But it's just a thing, it sits in your background. It's like a wallpaper that spins, and occasionally things crash into it, and it says some randomized language that usually complete bullshit. But people read into it. People can, put their own interpretations, and for a Philippa at least, it was a real agonising thing. She talked about euthanizing her mountain because she never wanted it to die, but then she died it had to die, and then she found out it died anyway, and she kind of got drunk and replaced it. And she felt really guilty about that because this digital mountain had got killed, or, you know. So that's quite an interesting thing. Yeah, they also let you move at your own pace. So just like this kind of, with Philippa and the mountain, it never made her, you know, interact with it. It invited her to, and then she was able to, or she could do it whenever she wanted to. So there's Lordran, because it's not VideoBrains unless somebody mentions Dark Souls. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, don't worry. But basically, one of the reasons I love the Souls series is because they do environmental storytelling extremely well. There is so much story wrapped up in that labyrinth that you will never, ever, ever have to interact with. So it works really well as a sort of gaming way to deliver character, because you could put down an NPC who sits there and stands in front of the doorway and says, I have this thing to tell you, the plot is this and that and the other, and you have to stand there going, oh, come on, I want to go. You know, Half-Life, when people are delivering you know, stuff, and then Gordon Freeman is jumping around mashing his face on things. Because, you know, players get bored and they don't really want to do that, because that's a really filmic thing. Because in video games, you have control, and you don't want control wrested away from you by this annoying other character who, you know, is actively telling you things. Likewise, one thing that really annoys me is when you want to look at the scenery or look at a character or pay attention to the things they're saying, and they're saying, oh, come on, let's go, come on, let's go. And it's like, no, wait, my video game, I will move when I want to. With stuff like this, if you want to spend an hour staring at a wall because you find it particularly interesting and because it provides you with insight into the game world and into the narrative, which is all NPCs do, it's all characters really do in media, is provide you with a context in which to enjoy the media, you can, and no one's going to harangue you for it, which is great. Yeah, and it means that you have time to really get to know them. So that is Dunwall, and like, who's played Dishonored? Yeah? Who remembers too much about the characters and the story involved? Like, did they really leave an impression on you?
Someone got assassinated.
Someone did get assassinated.
It
was a woman.
No, you didn't do it. You didn't do it. Spoilers. Yeah, okay, yeah, you don't assassinate that person, you assassinate everybody else. But what I mean is, so yeah, you've got the Empress and the Outsider and Corvo himself, but the most intriguing character, the person I wanted to know most about, was Dunwall. Because they presented you with so much, and this is linked to that toilet, because that's from a PC Gamer article called Why I Love the Toilets of Dunwall. And it's basically because Arcane spent so much time on their world as they decided to do. You know, they've got, it was basically a bedpan with a lid on it, because they went, what kind of toilets are people going to have in Dunwall? They're not going to have, you know, your average flushing Thomas Crapper style toilets. They're actually going to, you know, use something that's kind of appropriate to the setting. They spent a lot of time building that character. Effectively, that toilet is costume for Dunwall. And when I finished the game, I wasn't sad because I couldn't spend more time with the Outsider and Corvo. I was sad because I couldn't spend more time with Dunwall itself, because if, like any of you that remember or don't know, the main way they get fuel is from whales that are huge and are apparently sentient and live in this bottomless black ocean and might have sent the plague that's on Dunwall, but they don't explain any of that. You just look at a whale in the distance and it's on a hook and it's awful because they have to extract the fat while they're still alive, and it's hideous. And I really want to know more about that. You know, I want whale watching simulator. I don't really. It was really good game, like mechanics, but I really wanted to find out more about the whales, and it wouldn't let me because. And that's the thing. Dunwall was the most interesting character in that. This is what I'm saying. Yeah, they also make you work for your story. So this is Binding of Isaac, and there are loads of ones that do this that don't actually kind of deliver your story straight away. They don't just hand it to you on a platter. You actually have to look around. And this is the thing about Jensen's Mirror as well. I missed that on my first playthrough of Deus Ex. I never saw that. Tom told me about it, and I suddenly went, oh my god, that's amazing. So I went back and I looked at it, and I was like, yes, that's really good. Because what it did is it rewarded Tom for exploring and playing with the game. So with that, you know, getting to know these characters isn't just a thing that allows you to finish the game. It's a reward like loot. And it's a very gamey thing. It rewards you with narrative, and it rewards you with this richer world that you have explored. For example, you've got that cat down there called Guppy, who is dead, but Isaac, when he dies, leaves all his stuff to Guppy, but Guppy's dead. What does that mean? I don't know. Like, Binding of Isaac is a really interpretable game that doesn't really have like a set thing. Like, is it all in Isaac's mind? Is he mad? Is he dead? Is it the afterlife? Is it hell? Who knows? I don't even know if Ed McMillan knows. But the point is that you can, you can think about it and you can draw your own conclusions and you can experience the story at your own pace. So it kind of distills all of my points into one thing. Like, you can just play Binding of Isaac as a light bullet hell roguelike, and that's fine. You get loads of fun out of it. Or you can basically play it as a detective story, because trying to find out about how Isaac does. So yeah, so that's why our passive NPC is so important, because only in video games. I didn't mention that. Didn't mention it for the whole thing on purpose. But basically, the reason that I think it's so important that we have these passive and hidden NPCs is because they can't be done in other media. You can't do that in a film. You can't do that in a book, because, I can't, if they put it in a book, you can kind of not get something the first time around, but you can't actively miss it. Like, when I was effectively reading Deus Ex, I didn't read the bit about the mirror. I didn't read it and miss it and not interpret it. I just didn't read it, which you cannot do in a film or anything like that unless you have a director's cut or something. So, yeah, it's only possible in video games, and I like video games because it's only possible in video games. So, yeah, that's me. I don't know how much time that was. Oh, 11 minutes 44. Brilliant. I should time that really well. So there's some stuff. There's some further reading. So, yeah, that's that. Any questions? Yes.
I was the one that got me most interested was the mountain as an example.
Yeah.
Because I think out of all of them, that's the one that most makes you an NPC. And I wondered if you're interested, if you can think of any other examples of games that make you NPCs, and if that's maybe a quality of particularly like walking simulators.
Oh, I was just about to say walking simulators, and you took my answer away. Dear Esther, probably, definitely. Yeah, no. That is quite interesting. What's you just as a casual observer? Actually, one that does really interest me is passive mode on Grand Theft Auto 5's online. When you had stuff like that journalist who decided to basically become a war photographer for GTA 5. So he wandered around in passive mode and just took screenshots of people just going around. And that, effectively, you are an NPC. You don't interact at all with the players or the world. You just observe it, which I think is really interesting. And again, that's kind of something you can only do in video games. You can't wander around a film and observe it. You have your one viewpoint, and that's what you're given. Whereas with him, he can, walk around and find his own things, like real life, which is, So yeah. Anything else? You put your hand up first.
Yeah, you talked about characters largely in terms of kind of narrative, like driving the narrative. But what about another aspect of character in other media, just outside of a plot device, but an actual kind of human entity?
Well, the thing about that is that because those media are controlled, and the control is with the author, it means that pretty much they all have to serve the narrative. Maybe not the plot, but the way in which the way that you specifically interact with the world is always through the characters they write, and they always get to choose exactly what the characters say, how they say it, where you are when they say it. And there are sort of factors like how you're feeling, who you are, when you read the book, if you're tired, if you're angry or anything like that, you can interpret the same thing differently. But it's all kind of in service to the author's vision, which makes it all pretty much like narrative drivers. Whereas with video games, because they have no control really over they have they have an amount of control. But as I said, Gordon, in a book you can't go and mash your face into a wall while an NPC is talking. Well, I guess you could in real life, but not diegetically, I guess. So you can choose the perspective within the world that you interact with these things, which can turn them much more into context makers than narrative drivers. Obviously, I'm speaking in general terms, so yeah, there are, you can say that in some places, like Middle-earth, to just choose a good touchstone, might be its own character. But you only ever get to see it through the words that are written, whereas video games provide you with a much more complete picture. Because of the way that video games function, although like when Tolkien wrote the words, you can only look at those words specifically. Whereas because video games allow you to go most places, you have to build a much more complete thing. One quick thing: I have been going for 18 minutes. Do you want me to stop? Yes, I will stop. But come and chat to me afterwards. So yes, thank you very much. Yes.